Hello, colleagues. This is John Herrera with MuniTemps, Municipal Staffing Solutions. And today's article is titled, What's Fair About Fair Market Value? What's fair about fair market value? Before I go into a discussion about fair market value, FMV, you've seen this before, right? Fair market value. I want to start out with a little brief story. In 1983, I was a bank teller at the Bank of Coronado in San Diego County, California. And I remember one day in 1983 when the San Diego Chargers had recruited a first round draft pick, and they went with University of Arkansas, Billy Ray Smith, linebacker. I was a bank teller. I was 5'10". I'm still 5'10", but back then I weighed 150 pounds. So here I am standing at the teller line, and in comes it was a Monday morning right after the Chargers football game, and comes in this gentleman. He's a young guy, like 22 years old. He's 6'3", 250 pounds, pure muscle. Here I am, 150-pound skinny guy, a teller. And he makes a deposit. It's a check from the San Diego Chargers. Back then, they were called the San Diego Chargers, not the LA Chargers. Anyways, if any of you have stood next to an NFL football player, back in 1983, Billy Ray Smith was intimidating. He was huge. And I could just think, I like to play weekend football with my friends. And I was just thinking what it would be like for me to take the ball as a running back and go ahead, head to head with this guy, Billy Ray Smith. 240 pounds of pure muscle. It's not fair, is it? There would be no fairness. I would be playing out of my league. Billy Ray Smith would be playing out of his league, right? What business would Billy Ray Smith, this big mondo guy, have in playing with these young guys playing weekend football? He has no business playing with us, and we have no business playing with him. Now, I guess I want to point out and use this example, this comparison. You may say, well, what does Billy Ray Smith and standing in front of an NFL football player, first round draft pick, have anything to do with the topic of my article today? What's fair about fair market value? Well, let me just ask you to consider for a moment. Fair market value. There are three words through the FMV, right? Three words. Fair means that you have an equilibrium point where the curves of supply and demand intersect. That's called the equilibrium point. That's where the deal happens. That's the price. That's the equilibrium price. Not too high, not too low. It's just right. Goldilocks, right? Fair. There has to be fairness, right? There cannot be no involvement, no outside influences to establish fair market value. Market. What is market? Market is the place where you go to buy. Whether you want to buy widgets, whether you want to buy a home, whether you want to buy a car, whether you want to buy a loan. Remember, there is a market for loans. Loans are also a thing you buy, and there is a fair market value. Fair. Market. Talk about number three, value. Value is basically the price that's established by the equilibrium crossing of supply and demand. And today I'm talking about homes, residential homes for us to live in. I think back about during the last 2 years, I tried to buy a home. I have a home, but I was looking to move into a different home, one that was a little bit more accommodating to my family. But you know that I failed in buying a house in the last 2 years. I was actually pre-qualified, 2.7% interest rate. I was pre-qualified by Wells Fargo Bank. And yet every time I went out there to compete, I went head to head. The fair market value right in the center, I would lose out. I was never able to buy a house. I was basically going up against the Billy Ray Smiths of the housing market. Now, who are these Billy Ray Smiths of the housing market? Well, those are the big guys, right? Those are the guys that have Latinos know what this means. It means cash. So they had the cash. And every time I went to buy, every time I put in an offer, I was always outbid. Not only was I having people bidding $50,000 or $100,000 above what I was offering, but they had cash. My loan, my pre-approved loan for 2.7% was no good. It's interesting, I was thinking about the movie from 1987. Remember Gordon Gekko? He's a guy that's played by Michael Douglas. And in trying to talk about the markets, Gordon Gekko says, the key to the game is capital reserves. That means cash. If you don't have enough, you can't pee in the tall weeds with the big dogs. And that's exactly what happened to me. Probably happened to millions of people out there, right? Fair market value? Yeah, it might be the price, the equilibrium price, right? But was it fair? And that's what I'm talking about, fair market value. Putting the fairness back into fair market value. I believe that fair market value would be fair if it was the monthly mortgage payment was equal to 1/3 of my gross income. That's the standard we've always followed in the past for the last 50 years of my life. But again, I couldn't compete. I was up against the Billy Ray Smiths. And I remember how big this guy, I could just imagine how hard he hit. And lots of running backs and front linemen, not front linemen, but tight ends and so forth. I'm sure they felt the hit of Billy Ray Smith. Certainly I felt the hit of the cash buyers. I was out of my league. There was no way I can compete. And probably millions of other homeowners couldn't compete either. But you know what? This article today is not to complain. It's to come up with solutions. MuniTemps, the company I started 17 years ago, is sort of a public-private partnership in that we recruit talented professionals with an affinity for public service and the delivery of excellent customer service to the municipalities that need interim staffing or temporary staffing. And that's like a public-private partnership. So we work with government to find the best staffing solutions for interim while the local government, the municipality, is recruiting a permanent employee. But public-private partnerships, I believe, is the solution. Working together. Those of you that are on LinkedIn or any other business network, you know that in business, we can work together with government. Now, I work only with local government. I don't work with state. I don't work with federal. I work with local government. And I work together to provide solutions. So the solution is that we need good policy. And both business leaders and government leaders can come together to establish good policy so that out there in the markets, specifically I'm talking about the housing market, right? Housing market's kind of starting to come down again. That's because of all the Federal Reserve policies on interest rates and so forth, which frankly, there's a lot of involvement that's artificially affecting that equilibrium point where supply and demand crosses over. But there's a need for good policy so that these big boys can play with other big boys. Billy Ray Smith went head to head with other running backs of his day. You know what? I'm not sure if Walter Payton ever went head to head with Billy Ray Smith, but that would have been cool. I bet they did if they were in the league back in the early 80s. With the Chicago Bears, I think they did go head to head. I'm not sure. Regardless, the point is big boys, play with big boys. And those of us that are the average home buyer, the average employee or worker, let us play with each other. So when we establish the fair market value of a home, it's based truly on a fair play, on fair values. And that's the purpose of this today, is see how we can partner together, business and government. I'm talking about local government. Bring fairness into the markets, the deal making that we do, so that it's people can have a little more hope and expectation that someday they will own a home. We still have a very high level of home ownership in America. But the last 2 years, they've been tough. It's been like playing against Billy Ray Smith. Billy Ray Smith, if you're listening, it was pretty cool to have you in San Diego. I think you still live in San Diego, but I enjoyed watching you back in the 80s. And anyway, going back to the topic of fair play, let's do the best we can to come up with public-private partnerships that work for all of us for fairness and the fair market value. Thank you. John Herrera, nice talking to you. Bye-bye.